Hello everyone, so we from Group 1 are going to present our work, the TPCASTT analysis of the poem Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening by Robert Frost. But first thing first, let me read the poem. Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening by Robert Frost. Whose woods are, I think I know. His house is in the village though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. My little horse must think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near, between the woods and frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. He gives his harness belt a shake to ask if there is some mistake. The only other sounds the sweep of easy wind and dawny flake. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, we are going to analyze this poem using a TPCASTT. So, what actually TPCASTT is? TPCASTT is a way to analyze a poem. It stands for title, paraphrase, connotation, attitude, shifts, title again, and theme. Okay, now let's talk about the first TPCASTT. So, the title. By reading the title, I imagine the poem would talk about take a walk at the edge of the forest in an evening after the snow rain stopped to looking at the sunset view.
For the paraphrase, I think I know these woods. He has a house in this village though. He won't see me stop here only to see the woods covered in snow. My little horse must think it's strange to stop far away from a farmhouse. Between the woods near a frozen lake, the coldest evening of the year. My horse shakes his harness bells to ask me if there is some mistake. I can only hear the sounds of the sweep of light wind and feet-berry snow. The woods seem dark and lovely, but there are promises I have to keep. And before I sleep, I have miles to go. Yet, before I sleep, I have miles to go.
Okay, now I'm going to explain about the connotation of poem Stopping by Wood in a Snowy Evening. The first one is the form. So the poem actually has 4 stanzas of 4 lines each, with each line made up of 4 iambic feet or beat. And point of view. This poem actually uses first person perspective. Okay, next is the diction. The poet uses simple yet vivid words to create a peaceful scene that invite reflections. Terms like woods, snowy, and evening evoke a tranquil landscape. Meanwhile, words such as stop, think, and watch it suggests a moment of introspection. And the woods it symbolizes nature and the unknown, while sleep it carries connotation of both rest and death. It is also adding depth to the speaker's internal struggle. Overall, Frost's choice of words enhance the poem's themes of contemplation and the choices we face in balancing our desires with our duties. This poem also uses some of the imagery language. For example, the first one, woods fill up with snow. It is categorized as visual imagery language. The next one, the darkest evening of the year. It is also visual imagery language. The next one, the only other sounds the sweep of easy wind and dawny flake. It is categorized as auditory imagery language. The next one, the woods are lovely, dark, and deep. It is also visual imagery language.
So there are some kinds of figurative language in this poem. The first one is personification. Personification is giving human characteristics to inanimate objects or animals. Personification in this poem is expressed in line 5. My little horse must think it queer and to ask if there is some mistake. In line 10, these two mean that the horse is thinking and also asks. This cannot be happen because a horse is an animal. So these two lines can be an example from its personification. The second one is hyperbole, an exaggeration for the sake of emphasis. This poem gives 2 examples of hyperbole. The first example is in line 4. His woods fill up with snow. This can mean that all of the wood is fully covered with snow. The second example from the hyperbole can be seen in line 8, the darkest evening of the year. The word darkest is exaggerated phrase, evening of the year. Next, we go to consonants. Consonants in figurative language is about the repetition of the consonant sounds within a sentence or a phrase. For example, in line kiss his hair the spell, so the repetition of sound s in the end of the word. Now we will talk about alliteration in this poem. Alliteration is the repetition of the initial letter or sound in two or more words in a line. For example, in line 9, he and his harness, so the repetition of the sound ha. Another example is sounds and sweep in line 11 and dark and deep in line 13. Moving to the next part of figurative language in this poem, we will talk about the refrain, the repetition of one or more phrases or lines at the end of a stanza. This poem gives an example in lines 15 and 16, and miles to go before I sleep. Lastly, for this part we're gonna talk about symbolism. Symbolism is a word or image that signifies something other than what is literally represented. First example is the woods that symbolize a place to escape, and dark and deep that symbolize the feelings of desolation and nothingness, and then promise to keep that symbolize the social bonds and sense of responsibility. Now, I'm gonna talk about attitude in this poem. In Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening by Robert Frost, the speaker's attitude is reflective and contemplative. In this poem, the speaker paused in the middle of the forest with his horse to admire the beauty of nature on a snowy evening. The speakers want to stay longer to admire, but he has promises to keep and miles to go before he can stop.
In the TPCASTT method of paternalism, there is a shift. Shift is a change in the poem's tone, subject matter, meaning, or rhyme scheme. In the poem Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening, the tone starts off serene and contemplative as the speaker admires the beauty of the snow-covered woods in snowy evening. This peacefulness actually contrasts with the more ardent tone in the final stanza, where the speaker acknowledges their responsibility with the line and miles to go before I sleep. This shift highlights the tension between the desire to enjoy the moment and the pull of the obligations. Next, we have title again. After reading the full version of the poem title, Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening, not actually talk about the snow and the woods. The poem might talk about the narrative journey, while the woods on a snowy evening might symbolize the mesmerizing sight around him at the moment, which is distract him and making him stopping his journey to enjoy the beauty, the peacefulness that contrasts with the responsibilities that waiting for him, which put him in dilemma for a moment before he continued his journey to going back to his home, which is his duty. Next, we have theme. Theme is the main idea of the poem. The poem Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening by Robert Frost might talk about the conflict between our desire to taking a break and enjoying a good moment against our responsibility to keep moving forward in the life. The poem remind us to fulfilling our duty. So that's all from us. We accept all question, advice, or comment with warm heart. So please comment your thoughts to our TPCASTT analysis. Thank you for watching.